And just as I started the So this is Mary Shika with Iowa Mentoring Partnership. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And thanks for lots of folks for sending questions in ahead of time too. And we'll try to make sure we cover all of those today. We are recording this and there will be several resources that are linked in here, and we will send out the slides afterwards as well. I asked if in the chat, if you would please identify yourself with your name and your program location. And also we had a request. People are just trying to get a baseline understanding if people are their matches are meeting in person or virtually. And if you're meeting virtually, perhaps you could just make a note after you're in chat too, as well as what app or tool or platform you're meeting with your matches. So just little more housekeeping too, if you keep your lines muted, but if you'd like to speak, obviously unmute, and I will pause and wait for questions and input. This is your call and your time to share what programs are doing too. We're sharing our resources, obviously from the Iowa Mentoring Partnership, but you guys are a plethora of wealth of knowledge, and folks just want to hear that we're all in the same boat with figuring out what schools are going to do and how that affects our plans. And just want to hear what everyone is planning to do. I ask for your grace as well today, as I am still without power and internet, and our work remotely from home is now work from parking lots. And I sneaked into a friend's to their deck, and so we just are working where we can work. So just want to make sure that I have that excuse for my technology problems today, but no, thank you for your grace with that. So if you're reading in the chat, we're following how folks are meeting, still in person for some, and they're saying in person for now, and some are still deciding on school plans, virtually through Zoom chat. Some are resuming how they did in the spring. Yeah, just looks like a mix. And yeah, in person, and Jamie, thank you, got into a little bit of signing some release form and asking them to follow guidelines. Does anyone have questions for anyone else, what they shared in the chat? Want them to elaborate on that any more? So we'll be asking too to share some innovations about some things that you're doing. So we'll get to that later in the call as well. So these are some of the things we're going to cover today. Virtual platforms and some guidelines for that, and for all remote work, for all of the work that you're doing, not just the match, keeping the matches connected, program challenges and plans, obviously hearing other program plans, some of our resources, and then just want to give you a reminder about applying for the nonprofit recovery fund for those of you that are 501c3 nonprofits. So just big picture questions I'm going to throw out there, and then I'm just going to pause. I think some of those are for you to reflect on and just kind of to ground this discussion, but perhaps some of you have comments on these big picture questions too. Just want to look at this, that we're all coming from the same place, that we are trying to support young people in our communities, knowing full well that our communities look different and our programs look different in quote unquote normal times, but right now we're facing a lot of challenges with different community spread in different of COVID-19 in different areas across the state, and dealing with ever-changing school plans and how we fit into those. So we know that mentoring obviously is relationship based. That's what it is all about. And acknowledge that that relationship has changed, and if we're going to in person, that still looks different, and if we're meeting virtually, that looks different. But how do we continue to support that relationship? That is the basis of our programs. And I also would like you to ponder how your matches can meet consistently regardless of the changing plans of schools and communities. How can you best do that? That's what we talk about is so key to our supportive relationships, is that consistently showing up for a young person. So given that as the basis of our programs, are we continuing to be at the whim of ever-changing plans, or can we provide some stability in when we're making our plans for continuing to meet with young people? We know that mentoring is an essential support, and we know that's even more important at this time. We've been talking about this since spring. How are we continuing to communicate that, and how are we making sure that schools and our communities see us as that critical support even at this time? I put a link here to the considerations for returning to in-person mentoring. It's a resource that we've shared previously too, but you'll be able to access that. And if you're pondering that, and obviously you're looking at your community, you're looking at health guidelines in your community, and just some other ins and outs of your particular program. So I'm going to pause here throughout, like I said, big picture questions, and would like to hear any input or thoughts on any of those. Please do not be shy. Unmute, please.
I'll jump in here. This is Jay Wright with Teammates. I guess I think these questions you're asking here are exactly the questions we've been asking as a staff and as a, how do we stay relevant? And we know this is the most important time for kids. How do we remain consistent with those matches? And I think so. All those questions I think are really important ones. For us, it's really different because we deal with the school. So every school we deal with is different. You talk about mentoring is an essential support. We have some superintendents that have said mentoring is essential. It's absolutely part of our mission of our school. Mentors are going to be coming into the building. Other superintendents said, no way, we're in a high risk area. We can't have people coming in. It's not worth it. So then we got to figure out how does that school manage? So it's really different with every one of them. I think for us, the biggest thing is trying to find a way where that school can maintain consistent relationships with their mentors, with their kids, make sure they're getting that support. We try to do each week. How can we do that each week, even if it's virtual? Because we know kids need it now more than ever. I think the consistency is big. I will say one thing I've noticed, and maybe other people can speak to this too. Obviously, we have a person at each school that kind of runs it at that school. I feel the communication between that coordinator at the school and their mentors has been double what it was before, triple what it was before. I feel their communication with me has increased significantly. So I think there's, I'm not saying there's good coming of it, but I think that there's way more communication. There's more questions, more answers, more back and forth. And I really think we're actually getting to know our chapters better. I think the chapters are getting to know their mentors better. And on the back end of this, we might be in a better place. But I think the communication's actually been improved because of some of those issues. So we know we need it. And so we're trying to stay important and stay relevant. But it can be really tough to do because it's just trying times.
Thanks, Jay. Some great thoughts there. And I do love the focus. I've been trying to do that too with just remote work in general. Like there are positives that are coming out of this, and we are doing some things better, even though there are a lot of challenges at this time. Any other response to these questions or to Jay's comments? Okay, if no one else wants to unmute and comment at this time, or if you want to put anything in chat, any thoughts? There aren't right or wrong answers here. We're all just trying to figure this out and really welcome everyone's thoughts and contributions on this. So just sharing some resources again around virtual platforms and your match meetings. I guess another thing we just need to acknowledge that we know that meeting in person is best, and that's what we all want to do. But understanding that that's not a reality, in some situations, in some areas. And so how do we adapt if we're going to use virtual platforms, and how can we make those the most meaningful meetings for young people and for their mentors? So we do have some virtual guidelines for mentors and for programs. Again, we'll send these out afterwards, so you'll be able to look at those again if you haven't looked at those. Looking at your meeting frequency requirements and the length of those meetings, just being realistic about what works and doesn't work. It's an hour Zoom call. We all know we have Zoom fatigue. You're gonna be tired of listening to me after an hour. It won't be all listening to me, but what's realistic about young people meeting? Is it more frequently for shorter amount of times? Definitely for shorter amount of times. And what that format is also, if they're video or if it's messaging would be more frequently also. There's a link there for the best messaging apps for students, teachers, and parents from Common Sense Media. It's a huge list of some other platforms that I'm certainly not aware of, and certainly do not know the ins and outs of all of these, but there are a lot of resources listed there. But it's really important when you're evaluating these things, obviously, to look at the strengths and weaknesses of these various platforms and not throwing all of our other standards out the window. We're adapting how folks are communicating. And we also need to train our mentors and our mentees on how to use these communication platforms, not just the technological aspect of it, but also communication. And we can't make the assumption just because young people use technology and are very tech savvy that they know how to communicate in a mentoring relationship on a new kind of platform that they're using. Another tip, and someone had said that they've been working with their school IT. I know that some of you are more closely, you're embedded in the school or school program, not a community-based program coming into the schools, but sometimes your school IT will have guidelines or actually requirements for virtual platforms, or they may have platforms available to teachers that you've never used before, but could be an option for your program as well. Another resources program asked for were the ones I linked at the bottom. It's a change where a lot of programs are community-based that are school-based to be kind of more virtual-based or to have this communication. So having those agreements with the mentor, with the parents, and some tips on virtual etiquette for those sessions as well. Questions or comments about anything about these just general guidelines about match meetings virtually? So I did want to remind you that IMP is exploring hosting a virtual platform. I think, taking a step back when this all hit in the spring, we went into crisis mode and just tried to keep those matches going. And so we jumped on what worked for our program. And if we're looking at longer term messaging and virtual connections, perhaps we're looking at different platforms now. So we are looking at the perhaps the option to host a virtual platform, which would be a messaging system and also have a video component. It's much more robust. If you ever used our old e-mentoring platform, it's much more robust than that. The benefit of this is obviously that the program staff could moderate the interactions as well. The cost will be dependent on how many programs participate, and we'll just have to look at what we're able to cover as well. But the only way we're going to know what we should look into is to have feedback from programs. I don't want to go looking for a solution if there's not a problem. I have had, I think, about 9 programs respond. I would appreciate if you complete it whether or not you would use a system. I realize that some of you are completely set up on what you're going to use. I know that, like Big Brothers Big Sisters has a messaging system too, but I would love all of that just so we have a complete picture so we know what we're looking at. I'm going to look in chat here. Jay says tech help with mentors will be important. Mentors may have been on a Zoom call or other virtual tool. Yeah, to set up and manage a call be a challenge for some, definitely. And so I think that we'll look at another resource for mentor training too, and you can cover some of those things in there as well. Does anybody have questions about the potential here with this virtual platform? questions about what it looked like, or the link was in the last, maybe my last email, but regardless, I'll send this out again, the slides. Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership, had supported a couple programs in the spring. There were 2 different ones depending on ages, and they're still looking into their funding to be able to provide that for folks too. So I know some of you had inquired about that before, and they still do have their survey out there too, looking if people are interested in using those platforms. I know all of these things, we want the information sooner rather than later. I know you're making decisions and you're trying to move forward and plan with your program. So as soon as you can get information back to us about this, we can move forward with our planning as well. So obviously we talk a lot about how we're supporting the communication between the matches, but you continue to work remotely and do a lot of these other, all the other aspects of running a mentoring program virtually. So I wanted to remind you of some resources. Recruitment, I know people are struggling or thinking about how they do this. They're not getting out to talk in front of big groups and being out in their community. But even when you were doing those things, you were also posting on Facebook and have mentee needs descriptions on your website, and you had all kinds of other virtual ways that you were doing recruitment too. So just continue your best practices, and I know you're shifting those to virtual. We can engage in a discussion about any of these things. I'm just going to run down the list here, and then if people want to comment about any of these or ask questions about anything. Screening, we have to continue to make sure we're looking at safety as well as suitability of the mentor, and how we're still going through all of our processes, even if some of them need to be virtual. The training, there is a slide deck there for specifically training mentors for virtual mentoring, and that is something you can take and adapt and make it yours. It's just a good basis for a starting point for training for virtual mentoring. Match support guidance, we have had some guidelines for that, and closure guidance. I know people have questions around a lot of these areas and might want to know how much people are continuing to onboard mentors and train mentors. So if anyone wants to chime in about what they're doing in their program, or anyone wants to ask a question about how folks are handling any of these elements virtually, I'll pause now. Unmute yourself or put something in chat, please. Can programs share whether they're still onboarding new mentors and what challenges they've had, or how they're continuing to onboard?
This is Lauren in Burlington with Club M. We have a lot of our businesses, they're still not allowing people in, and that's one of our big places that we get our mentors is, like chamber meetings and Kiwanis, and they're still doing all of that virtually around here. So I actually did just a letter recruitment. I sent a flyer with just a letter about our program and just asked them if they would be interested in mentoring, and I actually have gotten quite a few phone calls just from the letter and flyer, which I was shocked that I got as many phone calls as I did, but very happy, surprised that just a letter with basic information about our program generated 5 or 6 possible mentors for our program.
Thanks, Lauren. I think that's a good reminder too, that folks are limited in how they can volunteer at this time too, and providing them an opportunity is something people are looking for.
Mary, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Felicia with YSS. I apologize. I'm in the car and I'm having a hard time connecting. But I wanted to say that one thing that we're hoping to implement is digital signatures to help us in collecting that.
You're cutting out a little bit.
Paperwork from parents and mentors when we're training them. So that's something.
Thanks, Felicia. You're cutting out a little bit, but I think you were saying that digital signatures, so you accept those from parents for consent. Is that the gist? And from mentors? I think that was the gist. And Felicia calling in from her car reminds me that I asked for your grace up front, and I did not acknowledge that I know many of you are in the same situation with not having power and having connectivity issues too. And I know you're still trying to do your amazing work too in these challenging times. Let's add a crazy storm, a hurricane in Iowa on top of everything else we're dealing with. So thank you for continuing to do the good work that you're doing. Jamie from New Opportunities said still onboarding and training new mentors and been leaving it up to them if they want to meet in person or virtually. So providing guidelines for folks and seeing what they're comfortable with as far as if they're going to meet in person, they have guidelines, and if they're not comfortable meeting in person, meeting virtually. Thanks. Jamie, I do want to change how practices have changed on board and training new mentors when you're doing virtually. Do you have any things that you're doing some things differently, things that are working or not?
So when we do it virtually, it kind of just depends on the mentor. I've done some people like over FaceTime if they have an iPhone. I've done other people like in a Zoom meeting. And then usually if I do like a Zoom meeting, I can kind of put together like a screen share so that I can kind of walk them through things that they need to visually see as far as training goes. And then I've emailed them the files that I would normally take to them in person and go through it together with them. I'll email them the file ahead of time, so then we can walk through it step by step together. And I mean, it's gone pretty smoothly that way.
Great, thanks, Jamie. And I think we've taken away the problem of in-person trainings and finding a time that works for people and trying to meet in groups. It's perhaps easier to have group trainings, and sometimes those are more fruitful to bounce ideas off each other and easier to join those things virtually. If you're not talking, would you please make sure you're muted because we're getting some background noise. So
I was going to jump in here quick too. I on the training, you know, I think the breakout rooms in the Zoom calls has been really good because we really tried to train and be interactive. How are you interactive on a virtual training? So we've had to change some stuff. We use the same training and the same slides and the same power, but now you've got to find ways to get them to be interactive and talk virtually. So that's been a bit of a change. And I think I was going to comment too, in regards to the online signatures, we do that. We always do a ton of paperwork. All that now is just a fillable document that they can just, you know, click on a bunch of buttons and send it to us rather than having to have a hard copy with a signature, and they just can click on it and send it to us with a virtual signature. So we've made that all way easier. And we are still matching and doing initial matches. We just think it's important right now that they keep meeting, and, you know, it's not ideal. It goes against, it's nothing we would have done 6 months ago, but you got to kind of adjust to the times. And then with recruitment, I would also say our best recruitment has probably been through social media, whether it's Facebook. We're doing Facebook Live stuff now. We're doing, you know, putting stuff out on Twitter, Instagram, you name it. If you're in a school or something like that, find a school website, get something on there. But we've actually had quite a few applications for being this time, more than we expected. So social media has been probably our best route for recruitment.
And again, what are people doing? What are they able to do if they can't go out in the community? Everybody's online. Everybody's on social media. So, and they're looking for things to do. So, yeah. And another example, like you guys are talking about adjusting the forms for your programs. Another example of doing things better. You know, we're really improving things because out of necessity, but it's better in the long run too. Jess, your comment in the chat, you're still taking mentor applications, but trying to meet outside in the community. You mean your match meetings are out in the community, and are you doing the meeting with the potential applicants out in the community? Do you want to talk a little bit more about some of the changes you guys are implementing? Jess, I don't know if you're still muted on your end or if you can share. So Jess must not be able to join us with her microphone, but Delita, it says they're still onboarding virtually and in person outside. Oh, the same kind of thing. Delita, do you want to elaborate any more? And
no, it's just pretty straightforward. We're doing the same things and just giving the volunteers the option of whether they want to do it virtually, or we have staff that are meeting volunteers outside of our offices in person.
And so is outside offices outside, or you were just trying to meet somewhere and keeping?
No, outside as opposed to inside.
Okay, okay. Thank you. And thanks for joining us from another hard-hit area of the state.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Jess. Go ahead.
So we're kind of a hot spot in Saragota right now. So all of our buildings for work, we have to be masks and take temperatures now. So we've tried to just start doing, like if I'm training a mentor, try to do it outside at a park. Or I'll go to their house, whatever works for them. Same with we did like a match and we just met at a school park. So then we just kind of go over with the families about their preferences for masks, meeting ideas, and just give them a list of different activities in the community.
Great, thanks for elaborating. Anyone else have other things to share about training or onboarding or launching matches? Again, launching a match virtually is not our ideal. If that's the reality of where we are, how are we doing the best we can?
Hi, this is Annie at Mentor Dubuque.
Hi, Annie.
We're doing something very similar to that. We're blessed to have like Flora Park right behind us. But even for our mentors and like what matches look like, we've had the same rules of not being allowed to be in the same personal space, to meet only outside, and to not even be able to transport. Some mentors have just kind of said, well, that doesn't make any sense. We don't want to do this anymore. Others have been, and if they're uncomfortable, that's fine. It's not the end of the world sort of thing. This is something that's beyond any of our comprehension. But we've still had people that, will be able to meet up, either by, just going over to the mentee's house and going for a walk outside, or just even being able to say hi, from in the yard, is a big deal. So those are kind of the things we have currently. We're really kind of skeptical of what it will look like virtual, because I don't know what that looks like really for community-based programs.
Thanks, Annie. And the comment in chat from Val, oh, I'm sorry, I just skipped one. Meg saying presented the option transitioning some school-based program to community-based, and that, that's not, just like some folks aren't comfortable transitioning to virtual mentoring, they're not comfortable with making that change too. Has anyone been successful in, or what has made it successful to engage folks in meeting in the community? Anyone had success with that? Yeah, so the moving to virtual, as we said, recruiting new mentors, that might appeal to some folks, but the transition for existing mentors who signed up for an in-person program, we understand that's that's a little bit of a challenge. Val shared a new way to engage new mentors is having a slideshow so they can introduce their pets, what they enjoy doing. So they have kind of a little bit about them before they meet on Zoom, which is a fun idea. I don't know if any of you have access to, well, Microsoft has a whiteboard. A whiteboard, I've been playing around with a little bit. It's kind of fun to share. You can kind of create, I don't know, I call it vision board or something. You could kind of create a board about yourself too. It's just a little fun way to do that and insert pictures. And if you, all of you have Microsoft obviously you can check out the whiteboard's kind of a fun thing to play with. That idea. Okay, we'll keep sharing other innovative ideas as we move forward. These are additional questions that folks asked, and I think we've been talking about some, but are there any other ideas about how things have shifted from the spring now that looking at longer term solutions? I feel like we've been discussing some of those. Are there any, and anyone that asked this question, anything specific that we haven't covered looking for the longer term solutions? We've shared a great number of activities before, and folks asked for a shared document, which is a great idea. So I will link that in here, and we can, it can be a document that can be living and breathing, and we can keep adding to. So I'll start with some of the activities we shared before, and we can continue with that. We talked about school-based, essentially shifting to communicate-based. Someone specifically asked this about our schools. Some schools are limiting visitors to essential visitors. And is anyone successful with making the case that they're essential? I know, Jay, you kind of said it's all over the board with different schools, but does anyone have success in how they really were selling their program that way?
I'll just say, I think the key in places where they're allowing it was two things. One, a really strong program to begin with. You know, if they were really strong and really a part of that community, really a part of that school, I think the superintendent, the principals of the school, like, hey, these people are important. I mean, the success of that program previously affected whether or not they're going to allow them in again. But I think the really big thing that was successful was really hitting the vision or mission of the school and showing how mentors could help with that. And if the administration said, yes, that is a part of our mission, we need to let them in. They are essential because they're helping our mission. You know, the guy coming in to sell copiers, that's not essential to the mission. But these people are coming in specifically to help with our children is. So I think if you're trying to sell to the school, really look at their mission and vision and really sell how teammates fit, or not teammates, I guess, but how your mentoring program fits in with that specific mission and vision of the school. I think that was really key for the ones that allowed it.
That's a great point, Jay. And yeah, social emotional learning is a component of schools, and they're certainly thinking about these things right now, even more so when they move to virtual learning in the spring. I'll share the link again about the social emotional survey that all students take across the state, and talking about their adult relationships in the schools. And you could dig into that for your school and share that information about how you are part of that for the school. Val, since you are a school employee and have the mentoring program there in Independence, do you have any insight to share about how your program is continuing to function? What's being allowed in Independence? If you can unmute, Val.
There I am. Okay, I had to think about where to unmute myself. Current situation is we're not allowing anyone outside of school staff and students in our buildings. So we're struggling with what does this look like? Because a lot of my mentors, because of what happened in the spring, was looking forward to coming back. So I'm working on rebuilding those relationships through Zoom chat. And those that are not comfortable with that, what do we do with them next? So it's a difficult place to be right now.
Yeah, definitely. And it kind of disappointing when you are in the school as well, huh?
Yes, but we're going to make the most of it like we did in the spring. We learned a lot about the students we didn't have the opportunity to learn before. Like they have a dog, they have a cat, you know, they live with mom half time, dad half time. It was a unique relationship building experience because we've seen them in different settings, as well as the mentors. You know, the mentors were at home. The kids hadn't seen their homes before. So there was some positives that came from that. And they really look forward to that social interaction time, even though it was virtually. It was just good.
Yeah, great. Good point. Again, a positive of this change. Felicia says that in Ames, the schools are going to let them have virtual mentoring during the school day, which is huge. With, like you said, they have a lot on their plates, but they also know these connections are so important for the young people. And I guess that's to the point of filling gaps for a school or fitting in their mission, right? If schools are in your community are in a hybrid plan and kids aren't in school all the time, they do have time, you know, that they're looking to fill as well. So helping to fill that gap and filling some of that other time for them. And Angie, you're saying the same as Storm Lake, that you're able to meet virtually, or you're same as Independence? Can you unmute and explain?
Unmuting is good. We're in the same situation where they're not letting any parents in the building. So obviously they're not gonna let mentors in the building. And so we're looking into the virtual meeting. And then if it passes all the regulations and stuff, we're also thinking like a lot of the matches meet after school. So since we are school-based, we don't really want to get away from that school-based, you know, so that when we do go back to normal, you know, that's not an issue. So we've talked about maybe some picnic tables and stuff outside of the school buildings so that after school we could have some people still social distancing and having their masks on, but still meeting on the school grounds.
Right.
Angie, this is Jay jumping in. We have some schools doing the exact same thing. I think they called it a teammates tent, and they're going to set up a tent outside of school. So it'd be on school grounds. You know, there'd be social distance activities they could do, but they're going to set up a tent outside. So I love that idea. It's just great outside the box thinking. So I love that idea.
And you just mentioned outside school hours too, and after school programs are looking for innovations too, and looking if they need to do a hybrid plan. And so I encourage you to partner, if you don't already, with your after school programs too, and see how you might be, you know, helping them fill a gap too with supporting the mentoring relationships through that program as well. Another question that someone had was other supports that programs are providing to meet young people's social emotional needs or to meet the goals of your programs. Are people, I know initially and probably continued, people were trying to help families meet basic needs. That has probably changed over summer too as restrictions were lifted, but are other supports programs providing? Kind of leading to the next slide is just in general, like other innovations. We've heard several that folks are doing. Lynn's ordered some social emotional learning cards, and they're going to be used with their school-based matches for discussion starters. I love that, any kind of discussion starters, because especially new relationships, building relationships, but just moving to a different kind of relationship too. It's more difficult talking over Zoom or call than it is to be in person doing activity and chatting. So great. Yeah, in-person conversation starters or virtual. So Anna, I'm really curious about how you've adapted, you know, since you're really the literacy component, and you said you're taking books to school care programs for the students and school, like after school care. Can you elaborate a little bit more? You're still muted.
Oh, I was gonna let Karen, my boss, elaborate
Oh.
if she can hear me, because I'm not really. I mean, that's basically all we have set in stone as of now. We've been just taking books to like before and after school programs in Des Moines, and we're doing stuff like that. We have other things we're coming up with, but nothing set in stone right now.
Karen, I don't know if you're able to. It looks like maybe.
She said she doesn't have audio.
I was gonna say, it looks like maybe she doesn't have a microphone. Okay, but it kind of brings up another thought too. I know folks have had, I know Johnson, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Johnson County, you guys shared the STEM kit or the kits from 4-H, and you shared those graciously with us for other folks to look at kits like that. But sharing activities and actually delivering them to homes is something that Matches could do virtually. I know that's something that a lot of programs continue to do over the summer. Val, they're reading over, that was a match activity over our virtual meetings. Okay.
Yes, it was. And so the mentors would find out what their favorite book series was or what books they would like to read. And so one pair, the child just was not engaging. He was just out there. He'd get up and leave in the middle of their discussion. And so he started reading his book, and they'd read a chapter every time they got together, and then they'd talk about the chapter. So it was really good about the student having comprehension and knew he was engaged. And it was Magic Tree House, a new book he hadn't read yet. So it was really engaging for both of them. So it really improved that relationship, which I got to watch, which normally I don't, because I stay on the Zoom chat too. So I just take off my camera so they don't know I'm there.
Thanks, Val.
And the adult does know, but the student always doesn't.
There you go. And Karen shared a little bit more of their plans and waiting for school schedules to settle. And we all wish that was magically going to happen. Yeah, and I think, we're talking about what school schedules look like as they return to school, and that could all change very quickly too, as we have young people in buildings together too. Yeah, scheduling is really, really a challenge. Any other innovations? And you may not think it's an innovation. If you just want to share how you're operating it, it's helpful to hear for other programs, just to hear how you're making this work. I know there were folks that couldn't join us today because of their power outage issues and connectivity issues. So we are recording this, as I said, and we will look to host another call probably as we get into school year, if folks are interested in that. I also would like to, if there are specific topics you would like to go more in depth on, if we could provide a longer time on any one topic and provide more resources for you, would you please put those in chat now? Or if you think of something later, just send it to me and just say, hey, we really could use help in this area, and we'll see if there's enough interest. We're happy to provide specific help to any program, happy to think through any topic with you, happy to connect you with other programs too. You guys are the experts out there doing this too. So if you want to reach out to us and say, I'd like to know, is there programs doing this well, and I hope we could connect you with other folks as well. But again, if you want to put anything in chat right now that there are topics you'd like to discuss more in depth, or if you'd like to come back and share some more once school gets started. And we certainly will have our regular peer share call next month, depending on what topics people think of our interest. Yeah, and ideas about activities, Angie, we'll start that shared document so everyone can continue to share resources. And I can't develop a vaccine. So other than that, I don't know how I could really help. Okay. So keep putting those ideas in there, and we'll try to we'll go in more in depth or get some more answers for you. The other thing I did want to make sure everyone on the call that is a 501c3 has applied for the Iowa Nonprofit Recovery Fund. If you got into the fund, or excuse me, into the application before and you were stopped because there were some glitches in how they were counting your income and expenses, those have been taken out. So even if it looks like you wouldn't qualify because of your expenses and revenue, seems like you're ineligible, you are able to submit the application and add an explanation of why you're still having revenue issues. So there are new FAQs on the website that will guide you as far as what to count for expenses and revenue. I am not the expert on this. There is a 1-800 number there at the bottom. I just know that Volunteer Iowa helped create this because we know nonprofits have this need. It was created in conjunction with Iowa Economic Development Authority, who comes from a business side. So that is where some of the glitches came in. But I know that you all meet the requirements to serving priority populations. Mentoring certainly meets that. If you're a 501c3 and you have documented losses of revenue or increase in expenses during March 1st, or excuse me, that occurred after March 1st due to COVID, your operating annual budget is more than $25,000 and you have 25 or fewer full-time employees, I encourage you to apply. The deadline is tomorrow at 5 p.m. If you've received other aid, you are still eligible for this. The 25,000, it will be the total of, if there's other state aid if you receive, but I don't think when you look at on the FAQ sheet, probably most of you have not received any of that other state aid for 25,000. So Karen, did you call? I see your question. You've got PPP, you're not eligible for funding. Did you talk with someone about that? I know you can't talk. Sorry, we'll have to call offline. Sorry about that. Remember, you can't talk. Okay. Yeah, I would encourage you to talk to someone because I don't like that. If you did it early on, the application has changed too. So I would encourage you to call that number and ask them about that or look at the application again. Any other questions about this? I know this doesn't apply to everyone on this call, but I just can't stress enough that, I know nonprofits have the need, and I just want to make sure that they are applying. So if you have questions or you want to email me, that's great. If you want to call me about it, that's great. The ins and outs of the application and the questions should be directed to that number at the bottom of the slide. I can resend, well, yeah, I can resend it, sure. Okay. Any other burning questions for the group or things people want to pose, questions for the entire group? Or things you want to talk about on a future call? I'm not sure, some of the questions you posed in the chat, I don't know if you want to still address those right now. Jess, is that a question you'd like people to discuss right now? Technology being used that are user-friendly for mentors? Jess, you're muted if you're answering us, if you want to hear from folks. If people found any.
Now can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh man. No, just as someone had a list, I guess I was just looking, like some of my mentors are older and like technology is sometimes a challenge. So I just didn't know if there was anything more like user friendly, easy to set, I don't know. Or even like the DocuSign, I guess I haven't even explored that, but I don't know. I guess we do so much in-person stuff. It's just hard to, branch out, I guess. But
Right, right. And I know that list that is in the one slide, it's a huge list, and I know that's
okay.
not, but
No,
it's
that's
not,
okay. I can look through it.
I know, but it doesn't help you like to know which ones maybe are the most user-friendly. So
Yeah.
folks on the call have, I have found with my 91-year-old father to send him a Zoom link has really been pretty easy to do. But I don't know if other folks, what you found to be user-friendly.
Okay.
I'm throwing that out there if others want to share that they found something that was people could jump in on pretty easily.
Hey, Mary.
Yes.
This is Lynn, and we connected with our school district with the idea that we would like to set up Google Meets or Zoom meetings between our mentors. We have a high school student whose mom works for us, so we had her basically to just kind of show us how to do that. Well, finding out then that our high school, with a school email account, she could not accept a Google Meets or a Zoom invitation. And she could also not send those from her school email. So that then took us to connecting with our IT department at the school district to ask those kinds of questions. And so they suggested that we get on G Suites for nonprofits, and that if we use G Suites for nonprofits, and I haven't done it yet, so I'm still needing to learn that, but then they would be able to allow us into their system so that we could set up those virtual meetings, and they would like those monitored. So we would be the ones sending the invitation to the big and the little so that they could meet, but do that at school for the elementaries. But the basics is that I think we just need to communicate with our school district and what does their system allow. And I was so glad we had a chance to figure this out before September, when we're wanting to make it happen. So we have the time to move through the steps in order to be able to do school-based virtually through our school district's Chromebooks that the kids all have.
Great. Thanks, Lynn, for that specific example. We had mentioned before about if you have that relationship with your school district, that talk with them about with their IT and how that they could make the IT they have work for your program as well. So thanks for that specific example. It does take time to set all these things up, obviously, and you do have to train the mentors and mentees. And I appreciate the question, Jess, because it's not easy for any of us to learn. I mean, we're all learning different programs as we have all these calls and meetings on all kinds of different systems. So we can appreciate the challenge for our mentors as well. Does anybody else want to have a question they still want to put out for the group? This is your chance to hear from these other experts on the call and hear what's happening in other communities. Well, hearing none, and I'm not seeing anything else in chat, we'll go ahead and wrap up the call. I will record the call. Excuse me, I will make sure we download the recording, but send out the slides to you as well. So you have all of these links. And, we'll start the list of activities too to continue to share with folks. So please, again, I just want to make sure, do not hesitate to reach out if you want to talk through anything. Even if I said we can be a listening ear too, just it's a challenging time and it can be frustrating. And the bottom line is we know we're all working really hard to do what's best for the kids and the matches we're trying to support. And we're all just trying to figure this out together. So don't hesitate to reach out. No question is too big or too small, and we'll just work together to come up with the best solution. So thanks everybody for joining us today. Appreciate all of your sharing, and appreciate all of you connecting and finding a phone and power and all of that good stuff to connect today. Thanks so much.